Hey guys, welcome to Stuck in the Middle. Today's topic of the day is the Middle Passage.
The first source we are touching on is Molly Morgan's source, where she discusses how slaves' dignity, collected knowledge, and cultural history was wiped away. Brooklyn, what do you think of this source?
This source details how slaves were treated as animals and were stripped of their identity and culture. Slave capturers' mission was to make the slaves feel subhuman so that they could never have the courage to run away, and sadly this worked. How about you, Mariah? What do you think of this source?
I agree with you, Brooklyn.
This source does show how
Women especially were mistreated. They were not only beaten like the men, but also raped. Like Molly Morgan wrote in Women of the Middle Passage, women in particular were subjected to brutal rapes and sexual abuse during their journey. Many women arrived at the shores of the New World carrying the children of their abusers. They resisted their sexual and reproductive oppression through the acts of abortion, however. Women were forced to turn to abortions because they did not want to have their captorer's baby and have the baby grow up in the same environment they're in now. Do you have anything to add, India?
Yeah, this source really emphasizes how slave owners really want to make their slaves feel dependent on them by degrading them to nothing. It's because of this they felt as though they need to do whatever they were told or else they would be without direction. It was almost as though slaves felt indebted to their owners when really they were snatched from their homes without a say. While there's great value to this source, as it mentions both the treatment boarding the ship and once on the ship, mainly the treatment of women, one limitation to the source is that it's just a tertiary source. Additionally, this source brings me to Thomas Phillips' journal, which is a primary source written by the captain of a slave ship. It talks about the brutality that the slaves experience and goes more in depth on the treatment that happens while on board the ship. Mariah?
Source B also talks about the cruelty the slaves endured, but it's more so focused on the ship and how life on the ship was for them.
Yes, life on the ship was extremely unsanitary and tough. Disease spread like wildfire. If one person had it, another was bound to get it because they were all kept so closely together. Dysentery was the worst. It was spread by the distribution of the food in communal buckets. The conditions they were forced to live through were unfathomable and inhumane.
I totally agree with you, Brooklyn. The treatment of slaves in the ship was disgusting. They were malnourished and unable to breathe fresh air because they were trapped at the bottom of the ship at all times. It was a living hell for them.
It was a living death. They were alive, but they weren't really living. And this story has a lot of value because it shows what the ship was like and how the slaves were plagued with disease. It's valuable because it's a primary source written by someone on the ship. If the slave capturers wouldn't kill them, then disease would. However, one limitation to this source is that it only shows one point of view, that being the view of the captain and not the people experiencing the hardship that he's describing. On that note, peace out. Stuck in the Middle is signing off.